Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Owner's Box After Dark. I'm your host, Mark Farinella, the former assistant sports editor, Patriots beat writer, sports columnist, and most valuable player for the Sun Chronicle of Attleboro, Massachusetts. And as I've mentioned many times before, in my second year of retirement and enjoying Hugh Hefner's pipe without any tobacco inside it. This is episode 28 of The Owner's Box After Dark. And it's my special Thanksgiving Day football edition. But we'll get back to that in a second. I know you've got questions in your mind already. We are recording this on Monday, Monday the 23rd of November, 2020, of course, and it is another live episode on tape here from the palatial confines of Studio A in Fulton Pond Studios, Mansfield, Massachusetts, home of the Hornets, who would have been playing on Thanksgiving as well. But it is a lot of thought. A lot of people this week are thinking about a lot of things, and I suppose not all of them are happy. But before we get to that, I just want to first point out that you will see that I am wearing a shirt emblazoned with the N logo that represents my alma mater, my college alma mater, Northwestern University, which I'm proud to announce is 5-0 in college football. COVID-19 be damned, we have an unbeaten football team in Evanston, folks. And they beat Wisconsin last week. Now, Wisconsin only played a couple of games, but they were very highly rated, highly touted, and an outstanding defensive effort. The Wildcats came through with the victory at what I used to call Dyke Stadium. Now, no laughing, please. It was spelled D-Y-C-H-E. But it was renamed Ryan Field when a very rich family of alumni forked over an awful lot of money to have the place renovated. And so it is now Ryan Field, well known as that, and it's the home of an unbeaten football team, which I imagine, and I didn't see the ratings, but I imagine they've taken a step up. I think they were in the 20s, and they've got to be in the teens after that win over Wisconsin. This week they are playing Michigan State. Michigan State it will be in East Lansing, and they are only 1-3, the Spartans are. Although I think they did beat Michigan, didn't they? What a horrible year Michigan's having. Geez, I hope Mansfield's TJ Guy has an out in case he takes a look at that record and says, oh, geez, I don't want to play there. TJ, of course, outstanding defensive end for the Mansfield Hornet football team, also a fine basketball player whom I hope to be seeing play shortly. But he did sign his letter of intent to play for the Wolverines, and these aren't your younger cousins' Wolverines, let alone your father's or your grandfather's. Wow, not very good. But yes, it will be Northwestern Michigan State Saturday at 3:30 on ESPN2. Head coach of the Wildcats is Pat Fitzgerald, and he is a former linebacker and a really great coach who has turned down a lot of opportunities so far to go someplace else and to do some good things. I know several pro teams have been looking at him. I had somebody say to me yesterday, said, hey, maybe Pat Fitzgerald would want to be the next coach of the Patriots, seeing that Bill Belichick's going to get canned at the end of this season. Well, I wouldn't go as far as to suggest that, but I don't think he'd be interested right now. First of all, I don't think he wants to leave that area. He's very happy where he is in the Chicago area. Also, funny thing is he's known to look to Massachusetts for recruiting, and he's pulled some great players out of Xaverian and St. Sebastian's, and so Pat Fitzgerald has got a good thing going there at Northwestern. See, the important thing about Northwestern is you got to know what you're coaching there. Very high academic standards, and for years, decades, they were the doormats of the Big Ten because they would not budge on any of that. So gradually, first under Gary Barnett and then later under Fitzgerald, the Wildcats have become a team that recruits bright individuals who can play some pretty nice football and really want to make something of themselves if they don't have a pro football career following afterwards. So you have to know how to spell your own name to play at Northwestern, to put it mildly. And I'm proud to be an alumni, and I'm proud to see what they've been doing there. And even though I couldn't name more than 5 Wildcats, if you asked me to, I still beam with pride when I see them continuing to represent the hallowed halls of Northwestern University with as much really impressive skill and dignity as they do. So, okay. Also in this episode, we will take a quick look at the Patriots' 27-20 loss to the miserable Houston Texans down there at what do they call it, NRG Stadium now? I've been to the place several times. I should know it by now. And, I'll tell you how quickly did the fanboy buzz turn. I mean, they beat the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday Night Football, and all of a sudden is this, we're going to the playoffs. We're going to the playoffs. Get out of our way, everybody. And then they lose to the Texans, and really they did not look very good doing it. I don't know why they went away from the running attack so fast, but we'll get into that later. And now it's, the season's over. The season's over. Get rid of it. Tank for Lawrence, or whatever the guy's name. Trevor Lawrence, is that his name? The guy who hasn't played in weeks with the long hair and all that. Okay. We will take another look at that later. But first and foremost for this evening, the episode is indeed devoted to, for the most part, to high school football on Thanksgiving Day. Yeah. And yet, how can that be this year? There is no high school football on Thanksgiving. I was mentioning to somebody that given that all of the games have been postponed to another season, to basically a makeshift season that has been created out of March and April, and I can't wait to see what the weather's going to be like for those games. There is no football this week, and I have been covering or doing something at a high school football game on Thanksgiving every year, probably since 1965, I think, was the first year my father took me to a game between Mansfield and Foxborough. And certainly working-wise, I haven't not used that holiday as a working day since 1976. I think that was the last time I did not work on the holiday. And that includes post-retirement because, as a lot of you know, I have shifted from a writing career to a fledgling broadcasting career. Before we get to that, I just want to make a couple of quick notes, as I normally do. Tonight's drink of choice is coffee. And as you can tell from that creamy head on the top of that, it is Starbucks Nitro Cold Brew. Cold Brew. How hard is that to say? Come on, Mark. I like this stuff. I'm not getting paid for the endorsement. Good stuff, though. The nitrogen gives it that little foamy head for a long time. I add half and half and Splenda to make it into a pleasant latte-like drink. Very good. And the mood candle tonight, as always, is something smelly, and it's the apple cider one that I showed you last week. I love the spicy part of it. The cinnamon in this really gives it a special holiday type flavor, and more of a Halloween perhaps, but I'm not a big fan of Halloween, and I don't like pumpkin, so I will enjoy it as a substitute. Okay. High school football. It's really sad because all over the state, there would be high school teams preparing for what really is the ultimate moment of their season. Thanksgiving football is somewhat of a anomaly in the rest of the nation, but here in the Northeast, mostly Massachusetts, Rhode Island, some Connecticut, and a few other states have a few games here and there. But this is a regular season week in most of our football situations. Now, in Massachusetts, they changed the playoff system a long time ago. The regular season ends at the start of November, and there are several weeks of playoffs, and then sometimes the Thanksgiving Day game has kind of gotten pushed aside because teams that are still in the playoffs by that point are preparing for the biggest games of the season, which are the Super Bowls and for state championships. And that's all going to change again next year when we get back to alleged normal. But in the meantime, for some teams or some schools in this state, it's not as big a deal as it used to be. I know that. There are a lot of towns that stopped playing. For many years they'd played, but because of changing demographics, changing population, enrollment figures, competitive levels, rivalries disappeared. I'll point to the case of Taunton High School and Coyle Cassidy High School in Taunton. Taunton and, at the time, Monsignor Coyle, the only Catholic school in almost all of everywhere below the Mass Turnpike, I guess. It used to be a great rivalry, bloodletting on Thanksgiving Day. And even after Coyle merged with the Catholic Girls' School in Taunton, Bishop Cassidy High School, so they became Coyle and Cassidy, it still was a good rivalry for a while. But then Coyle's enrollment started dropping. Taunton bailed on them for a while. Coyle found Bishop Feehan in Attleboro to be their rival, and it was actually was a very good one. I thought it was very competitive. But then there was a outcry in Taunton. They had played, I think, Bridgewater Raynham for a few years, and they were getting their hats handed to them by doing that. So people in Taunton demanded that the Coyle versus Taunton rivalry be resumed, and it was, and the results were awful. Coyle was killed year in, year out, and Coyle Cassidy's numbers kept shrinking and shrinking until last year the school closed. And that's sad. My cousin David went to Coyle Cassidy High School, a Mansfield product, but he played at Monsignor Coyle and went on to play at Holy Cross. Yeah, it's tough. You know, what would it be like to sit back and say, yeah, the high school I graduated from doesn't exist anymore? And Coyle had a really good reputation in sports, boys and girls alike. I mean, their girls' basketball team for years were the scourge of southeastern Massachusetts because their enrollment level was so low. They could play in the lower divisions, the lowest divisions, and actually clean up there in the tournament, whereas they might have had a little bit more difficulty in a higher division. So, but the fact is, we in our area here, where I live, are kind of blessed. We have some very, very good rivalries and games that have been around for a while. Like here in my hometown of Mansfield, the folks here in Mansfield and our neighboring rivals in Foxborough, both towns in which I have lived over the years, they would be preparing for their 90th annual game. Now, not all of them were played on the holiday. In fact, when my dad went to Mansfield High School, they played Taunton on Thanksgiving Day in the 1930s. But Foxborough and Mansfield had been playing since the 1920s, but the game didn't get moved till the to the holiday until I think the late 1940s. Still, it is a great rivalry. It is. It used to be what decided which team would go on to a Super Bowl playoff situation and which team would go home sad, even with a 9-2 record or something like that. Mansfield leads the overall series 51-35-3, but it has been very, very competitive for many years. It's been going back and forth a little bit in recent years, but and the two of the longest tenured coaches around here, Mike Redding at Mansfield High and Jack Martinelli at Foxborough. I mean, it is a classic rivalry. And I know there are a lot of people who are going to be feeling pretty sad that there's no game being played this year. Now, as for me, I would be preparing, along with my broadcast partner Glenn Farley, late of the Brockton Enterprise, to be calling the 61st holiday meeting and the 68th overall game between King Philip Regional High School of Wrentham and the Franklin Panthers. And That's a pretty good game, and it was last year. It certainly was of course, it was a better game if you were a King Philip fan. I think the final score was 14-0 King Philip, and it was really a game that did not go according to the script that neither Glenn nor I thought it would, but it was extremely competitive, and King Philip played with confidence, as they have in a lot recently. Like, how confident is King Philip right now? They have won 10 straight games on the holiday and 17 overall, because in the Hockomock League, there's a quirky little situation where they have to play Franklin in the regular season as well, because of the division they're in. They are in the 6-team Kelly Rex division, and they do play all of the teams in their own division first and foremost, and then they pick up a non-league game somewhere else. Unfortunately, it means that oftentimes you don't see the teams in the other division, Davenport division, even though you played them for decades leading up to this point. But so as a result, King Philip has just cleaned up lately. And when I was a kid, Franklin had a huge lead starting out in the rivalry, and as a fact, Franklin still leads the holiday tally by, I think, 3 wins, 31, 28, and 1 tie. But as I've said, King Philip has taken the overall lead for all the number of games, because I guess this, as I said, would be the 68th if they indeed had a season this year and played during the regular season as normal. And 17 straight wins is nothing to sneeze at. So, but we'd be preparing to go over to Pizzini Field in Franklin in the auxiliary press box on the other side of the field with the very high ladder, which with my knee surgery would have been really fun to try to climb up. I don't even know now if they're going to let us go to the road games, but that's another story for another day. But that's what we'd be doing. Throughout our area, we have several really good games. Seekonk versus Dighton Rehoboth. They are going into their 54th annual game on the holiday, and I think 57th overall. Norton and Bellingham and Bishop Feehan and Bishop Stang have long histories, but their rivalries were kind of punctuated by a big interruption in the middle. Norton played Bellingham a lot in the 60s and then didn't play them again until the 2000s, but because of the league affiliations, that's why they got back together. Same thing with Bishop Feehan and Bishop Stang. They played what was called a rivalry game. They played on Thanksgiving originally, then they started playing on the Saturday before Thanksgiving, and then they had to play in the middle of the season because Feehan found some other games to be played on Thanksgiving. But they did bring it back together recently, and I think they're going to try to keep that going for a while, even though Feehan now, and Stang also, there is a league game now because they are in the Catholic Conference, I believe, and that is, or is it Catholic Central? I'll remember it later. But of all these games, none of them mean as much, I think, to any of their respective communities, and with all due respect to all the towns I just mentioned and the schools and all that, none of them have the same meaning as the Attleboro and North Attleboro game. Now, they've played for 103 times in all, and briefly they had that same situation where they had to play in the regular season, but I think they only had that situation once because then North Attleboro went down to the smaller division. But they did play in a Super Bowl once, and they don't like to count that. Nobody in either of those towns want to count the games that did not take place on Thanksgiving. They don't even want to recognize them, although those of us who are involved in the effort to keep records and keep things straight, we have to keep those in mind. But this would have been the 100th game on the holiday for Attleboro's Blue Bombardiers and for North Attleboro's Red Rocketeers. And there aren't that many schools that have made it that far to a century's worth of games. That's an awful lot of games, folks. Wow. I mean, I think when I went to school in Mansfield High, they'd have played maybe 50 of these games, and we thought it was a lot then. But 100 games. Wow, that's impressive. And unfortunately, because of COVID-19, because of the decision that came early on in this whole process, in this whole pandemic. The football season was moved to a window in March and April, and so there will be no football at Tozier Cassidy Field in Attleboro this Thursday. You know, that's kind of a shame, because I know the 100th game would have created a ton of excitement and interest in a way that almost high school sports doesn't get anymore in those two communities. I mean, that's just really a heartbreaking circumstance. You know, 2 years ago, I started my new career as a football announcer, and through the graciousness of my friend Peter Gay at North Attleboro Community Television, otherwise known as North TV. And I started by sharing the football broadcasting booth with a couple of other guys who had been doing the games a lot longer than I had. I was there with play-by-play announcer Jared Ware and the veteran analyst Del Malloy, the former women's basketball coach at Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts, and I think he went on to become the AD at Salve Regina, I think it was. And you know, Dell's a local resident and certainly knowledgeable in all of the sports, and so they were kind of moving another guy and a blabbermouth into the booth, and we all had to kind of find our way there. But I thought by the end of the season we were doing pretty well. And Thanksgiving Day 2018 dawned as about 10 degrees Fahrenheit on the thermometers of our homes in the area, and it didn't get much warmer. Believe me, it was one of the coldest Thanksgivings I have ever endured. And not just enduring it, but enduring it in a way that I had never endured a game before. At about 9 o'clock in the morning of Thanksgiving Day, we had to arrive at Tozier Cassidy Field, and I'm not sure why this was the case. There was a problem with us being in the press box. The Attleboro had a crew, and they had a cable TV crew, and they had to take up the space because it was their home. And then, as is the case oftentimes with high school press boxes, they also become luxury boxes for principals and school committee members and mayors and whoever else wants to stay warm during the game. So it's not much press inside press boxes anymore, and I've found that to be the case in a lot of places I've gone over the years. Although once I became a cable TV broadcaster, I actually I stopped arguing about that. But at 9 o'clock in the morning, we boarded one of those coaches' lifts. You know, the things that just go rising up like up like that. You know, they have like those crossed. I can't even describe it, but you know, it's like you got a platform and it goes up in the air and you go up about 50 feet or so. I'm not sure how high, but we were behind we were right on the 50-yard line, behind the North Attleboro stands on the opposite side of the field. And I'll tell you, it was freezing cold. Now, we were all dressed like Eskimos, and even then that didn't help all that much. I had a thermos of hot chocolate. It got cold within, and it was a pretty good thermos too. It got cold within a few minutes. But I had big gloves on, all that, but I really couldn't do anything with it. The only thing I could do was put on my headset, have the microphone sticking between a little gap between my scarf that I was wearing to try to keep the face covered up. And so we sat there trying to call the game, feeling the riser sway in the wind like this, and worrying that we might tip over and end up in the laps of the fans below us. But we called the game, and I think we did a pretty good job of it. A very, very stunning 20-7 win by the Red Rocketeers over the favored Bombardiers on their home field. And we have some of the highlights of that exciting game right here.
Yeah, first year in the high school facility. He's only been there for a couple months. His first varsity pass down the field. It's hanging up and it's complete. And Gauman breaks a tackle and he will go. The freshman's first pass attempt is going to go 85 yards. And North Attleboro is his extra point away from tying things up.
How about that for a freshman throwing that ball? It was up in the air. It was like a balloon coming down, but right to the right guy. You want to throw it to him. He's going to score the touchdown on that. Gorman, terrific run after the catch.
Well, the questions have been answered. He can throw the ball as far as he can kick it.
Yeah, you talk about the wind at your back. There might have been one last gust that just first and goal, ball spotted at the 7. 2 receivers to the top of the formation. DiMatteo out of the shotgun on the left hash. We'll keep it one more time off that right side, and he will dive forwards and walk into the end zone. 13-7, North with the lead. The freshman goes in from 7 yards out.
What's the saying? And a child shall lead them? There you go. Freshman taking charge here on Thanksgiving Day. No bigger stage at all for these teams.
And the North Attleboro crowd is fired up. They've been energized by the change and the benefits that the young man has brought in, and he'll stay on the field to kick the extra point. If my memory serves me correct, Attleboro scored on a similar toss sweep pass either last year at Community Field or 3 years ago at Community Field. As DiMatteo's into the secondary, it's a foot race. The young man making his case for Offensive Player of the Game. And he will go the 30, the 20, and the freshman goes 88 yards for the score and puts the exclamation point on his first varsity offensive appearance. He had an 85-yard touchdown pass, an 88-yard touchdown run, and North's future looks to be pretty bright with Tyler DiMatteo running the show.
I have got to just sit back and say I have never seen in 40-plus years of doing this a freshman come in and have this kind of an impact in a game. Tyler DiMatteo, my hat's off to you, my friend. Terrific.
And now they're using up as much time as they can because he's got to catch his breath, get his wits back about him. He's going to kick the extra point. And it's a cold day. The lungs are certainly burning right now after that run.
That was a pretty good game. How about that freshman? Tyler DiMatteo. He's still playing. This should be a senior year, I believe. Sophomore last year. Actually, this could be his junior year. My goodness, this kid's going to be around forever. That was a game for the ages. And as I said during the broadcast, in all the years that I have been doing this, either as a print writer or now in this role, I'd never seen a freshman come up to the varsity on Thanksgiving, his first game of the year, first time he'd played at all, and to do what he did. He did it all. He threw, he ran, he even kicked. And it was just amazing, absolutely amazing, and a thrilling game. And even as cold as it was, I just felt the warmth of that performance kept me going the whole time. Now, if you're wondering why you heard next to nothing of Dell during this broadcast, it was because his microphone and headset froze up somehow, and he couldn't talk, and he could not be heard by either of us. So I sensed it. He didn't say anything because he was sort of standing or sort of sitting in back of me a little bit and didn't really want to get my attention or anything, I guess. So I just kept talking, and that kept me warm. And so that's why you may have heard a little bit more out of me on those last couple of touchdown runs. Oh, and by the way, you may get a kick out of this. I actually went up on that riser wearing a set of Depends. And, let's face it, if you think you're going to be someplace for 4 hours and you're not going to be able to move, no matter how many times you void before you get in the car and go over there, and no, I did not have coffee beforehand or else I would have been sunk. You just have to hope that nothing's going to happen, or if you do, you better be prepared. And as I've gotten older, I had some not issues with my bladder, but I think part of it because of my diabetes. There were a few years where I was going an awful lot. Since I've been on my meds, I'm pretty normal there nowadays, and feeling pretty good about it. So fortunately, I did not have to use them. If anything else, I think they kept me warmer, because I did have those on and regular underwear and sweatpants and then my regular slacks. So I was pretty well layered, and I think that helped. But I got through it without any issues, and thank God for that. Okay, right now, North Attleboro does lead on the holiday, 61 wins, 30 losses, and 8 ties over those 99 previous games. Now, if you think that's not competitive, you're probably right. It wasn't for a long time. There was a stretch of something like 21 straight wins by North Attleboro, and it was just, Attleboro was struggling to put a team on the field for a while, even though Attleboro is the much larger school. But in the last decade or so, they've gotten more competitive with the addition of Mike Strachan as their head coach. Mike Strachan's a former Rocketeer. We have several former Red Rocketeers planted around the area in coaching positions, and they're all doing fairly well. So Mike has done a pretty good job of reviving the Attleboro program. They have a much more athletic-minded program going on over there, from the principal, Bill Rooney, on down. I think they're all very important. They all feel it's important to kind of promote this blue pride over at Attleboro High, and it's working. And they're going to open a new high school next year. It's going to be gorgeous. It is going to be absolutely. I can't wait to see a basketball game in their gym. They're going to have a big court like the Mansfield High 94-foot court, and it's going to be on a second floor where they're going to be able to look down this long staircase that enters in there. They're going to have a weight room nearby that shows, and they're going to have a fairly good attendance capability there. That's going to be fun. But Attleboro is long overdue for a new high school, and they are certainly going to benefit from it. But they've won 3 out of the last 7 in football. They've been competitive in almost every one of them. And they did win 13-7 last year. So North Attleboro is actually looking to break a 1-game losing streak, I guess, if that's the case. But there's no game. So what are they going to do? Okay, here's what I've heard. I made a few phone calls to some old friends, even though I'm not a legitimate journalist anymore in some people's eyes, though not theirs, thank God. And here's some of the things I heard. Of course, as you know, football's being played in the spring. But the window for games right now is uncertain. They're not sure how many of the games are going to be able to squeeze in or what kind of playoff situation they're going to have. Some want to have a divisional playoff situation. Others would rather just be leagues and not have to go out and play other people, because you're only going to have maybe 2 weeks at the most, maybe 3, to squeeze in games to have to have a legitimate regular season to begin with. So what the Hockomock League may do is they may have 5 games played, and they may have maybe a 6th, a non-league game somewhere in there, and then maybe a couple of weeks for what they call the Hockomock Cup, like they've done in the other sports so far. The question here then is, will North Attleboro and Attleboro actually play? Because they're in different divisions in the league, and they may not be able to schedule in a way that would recreate that Thanksgiving type of thing at the end of the year. So they might actually just sit back, and I know they're negotiating. All the people involved are talking about they may not even try to play in that spring situation unless something happens and they end up facing each other in the Hockomock Cup. So if that's the case, then, well, that Hockomock Cup game would obviously be a game not played on the holiday, and that's how they would count it going forward. Or would be the case even if they did schedule a game, that would be the same situation. They would not count it on the holiday list. But they don't want this season to go by without something special, and it's my understanding that this is also the 100th anniversary of North Attleboro High School football. So as a result, I know that there are efforts afoot for something special to be put together for this week, and to commemorate it, but then also then to go on forward to maybe that situation in the springtime. If they do get to play, maybe they get throwback uniforms or something like that. Maybe they would have special patches, something to make sure that this year's seniors don't feel left out in this situation. They will probably be wearing something on their uniforms anyway throughout that to mark the fact that this is their 100th year of football. But as for going forward and finding a Thanksgiving Day game, first of all, we have to hope that COVID-19 becomes a thing of the past by the time we get around to Thanksgiving of 2021. And if that's the case, then it's my understanding they will probably try to recreate what would have happened this year. This is supposed to be Attleboro's game. It was supposed to be go to North Attleboro's game next year, but maybe they'll just do that swap and just say, okay, look, we'll play it at Attleboro. As I was told by somebody who is in the know, that North Attleboro did host the 75th anniversary game between the two, so it's only fair that Attleboro get a chance to host this one. So they would probably work together to do that and make sure that all the festivities that would go on there would take place at the 2021 meeting of the two teams. So 100 gets put on hold for a while, but recognition of the fact that North Attleboro football has been around for so long would be held close to everybody's hearts over there in Red Rocketeer land, and they can go on from there. So, well, I know the people who are involved in all this. The athletic directors, Kurt Kummer at North Attleboro and Mark Hool at Attleboro High School. The coaches, Mike Strachan at Attleboro, Donnie Johnson at North Attleboro, and no, he's not the guy who was in Miami Vice. They're all good people, and they really have the interests of their athletes at heart. And I just know that they're going to try to make it work. If there's any way that all of these kids involved in the program, with what they're going through right now, they're going to try to make it work so that they can recoup that celebration in some way and share in it not only this year in maybe a slightly lesser manner, but also make sure that the proper celebration goes on going forward. So, with all that in mind, I have prattled on for 35 minutes, so we're going to take a quick break for a word from one of our Asian sponsors, and we will be back with a quick look at the Patriots. Why do we even bother after this message?
Always in motion is the future. Believe in your own power. You must. May the force be with Japan.
Oil Japan. Cup noodle.
Hello again. Welcome back to the Owner's Box After Dark. I'm Mark Farinella. You knew that. We are recording, of course, on Monday, the 23rd of November, one day after the 57th anniversary of the assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy in Dallas. And if you want to read something I wrote about that, because I actually was alive then, you can go to my website, which I'll give you the address for later. We'll get into that later. Anyway, I've been thinking here in the break how I'm going to put a positive spin on this Patriots game, but I just don't think I can, so I'm just going to tell you what happened. If you haven't seen it, I'm sure you all did, but I'll give you a couple of my perceived perceptions. How do you like that? I like that word. Of course, the final score was the Houston Texans 27, the New England Patriots 20. It was tied 7-7 after the first quarter, and the Patriots took a 10-7 lead with 8:32 left in the second quarter on a 45-yard field goal by Nick Folk. And I'll tell you right now, I would give that guy the offensive MVP award, maybe even the entire MVP award for this team this year, because He's getting the job done. And he was the guy I probably had the most doubts about entering the season. So, but the Texans scored 2 quick touchdowns, and they were up 21-10 at halftime, and that was pretty much all she wrote. There was one beautiful touchdown pass from Cam Newton to Damiere Byrd, 42 yards with 8:14 left to go in the third quarter, and that gave cut the Texans lead down to 21-17. But then it just became a field goal kicking contest. The Texans got 2 of them, the Patriots got 1, and that was that. Questions about the game. First of all, why in the hell did the Patriots go away from the running game so quickly, even though they were playing against probably one of the worst rushing defensive teams in the entire NFL? They ended up 24 carries for 86 yards on the ground. Damian Harris, who's been just on a great upward slope lately, got the ball 11 times, got 43 yards out of it. He got 5 carries on the Patriots' first possession and hardly saw the ball afterwards. So and it wasn't like he wasn't doing anything. It's just that they just went away from it. They just said, "Oh, hey, Cam, throw the ball, Cam. Let's go, throw the ball." And he did. Newton was 26 for 40, 365 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions for a 102.6 passer rating. And Byrd was the leading receiver. He had a good game. 6 catches out of the 7 balls thrown at him for 132 yards, and, of course, the long touchdown. But that wasn't the way you're going to beat this team. And then the Texans really put up a good rush. And the Patriots had some injuries along the offensive line, and the Texans were just getting in on Newton, and then a drive would start to look positively, and then all of a sudden it would go all to hell as Newton's in a heap down on the ground somewhere. So I just really think they went away from the run way too soon. Big downer in the third quarter. In fact, right off the bat, just about a minute and 39 seconds into it, on a sweep to the left side, which ended up being a loss of 1, Rex Burkhead, the running back who's had his best career season yet, suffered a serious knee injury. They believe it's an ACL tear. He was supposed to have more examinations today of that, and without a doubt, he's out for the season. And he's supposed to be a free agent at the end of the year, I believe, too. Look, I know it makes me a bad guy to say it, but it's not as if an injury was not anticipated. Rex has not been the most durable guy in the world. Now, I do feel bad. This was a serious injury. This could happen to anybody. But, he's lost a lot of time playing, and you just had a feeling that at some point he would be hurt. And they have great depth in the backfield. In fact, Sony Michel was reactivated this week, although he was not on the active roster for the game. But they have pretty good depth in their running back core, so they're going to be able to endure this. In fact, you'll see James White's carries go up a little bit. He's been on the decline this year. I don't know if it's people are, I think, writing him off a little bit too early. I do think that the tragic loss of his father and his mother's hospitalization following that car accident certainly hurt him spiritually. There's no question about it. But he is a competitor and a half, and I do not believe that that James would let that eat away at him to the point where he couldn't contribute. But I think they felt that there were other ways to go. James has still been productive in his third down role, and I think you'll see a little bit more of him going forth. But also, another very disappointing thing about this game was that, all right, Deshaun Watson, aside from this running, which he can do things with, he completed 28 of 37 passes for 344 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, a 121.9 passer rating, and he had 3 receivers with 80 or more yards. So the Patriots secondary, and Stephon Gilmore was back this week. The Patriots secondary, despite some moments of brilliance at times, it's just not steadily competitive, and they had no pass rush whatsoever. No pass rush. Of course, it's tough with a mobile quarterback. I know if you have a statue back there, I guess they can get after him. But This was a difficult game in all facets. So now they are off the course for 8-8, which they had gotten back on last week. And of course, as you recall, 8-8 is my prediction from the beginning of the season. They're home this week against the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm just not feeling good about that right now at all. I don't think it's a given that they're going to lose the game. I do think that a young quarterback will, struggle with some of the things that Belichick will throw out there, but I just don't know if Belichick has the talent to script a defense that will discombobulate them. And I'm just not feeling good about that. In fact, it could be the tipping point for the season right here, because after this, they've got a long stretch on the road, okay? The two Los Angeles teams, then Miami, and then they have to play the Bills again. And let's face it, instead of winning out to make the playoffs, this team could be losing out, if not for the presence of the New York Jets, who are still blessedly winless. I'm looking at 5-11 as a possibility, and let's just say Belichick's first season, he was, I believe, 5-11, 2000, and maybe in his last season. Would that happen? I don't know. And if it did happen, would we be going through two other Belichicks before you find another coach somewhere? Sounds like Don Jr. and Eric to me, but ooh. All right. Not feeling good about that team. All right, that'll do it for tonight's show. I know this is the commercial came late tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Just a couple of coming attractions. You may be aware that the Massachusetts Interscholastic, I'll get that out. The Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association has started on the path to approving a winter season. They've gotten all of the steps to this point. The board of directors have signed off on it. Now it has to go back to the COVID-19. Whatever. There's layer after layer after layer of bureaucracy, and it's probably all going to sit in the hands of Governor Charlie Baker at some point. And if these COVID-19 numbers don't come back down, I'm scared. I would like to see a winter season. Right now, they have established a target date of startup for practices as December 14th. So it is delayed from what it was originally going to be. First, it was going to be the 21st, which would have been 2 days ago. Then it was going to be the 30th, and now it's back down to December 14th. Although I think the Hockomock League had planned for December 7th originally, but now the 14th with the opening of practice. So that means games would probably be played either in the last week, and that's a holiday week, so I'm not so sure that they would want to schedule anything, or probably the first week of January. So then they'll try to squeeze in, I guess about 6 to 7 weeks of basketball and hockey. That's going to be tough. I think they'll have to make a couple of accommodations there, maybe some 3-game weeks involved and all that. But you may be aware that I'll go into greater depth on this in my next podcast, but there are a lot of changes in the rules, but nothing terribly significant that's going to make the games unrecognizable as maybe field hockey was, or maybe as soccer was too. But there will still be some things that people have to adapt to. And again, I'm not sure what the crowd situation is going to be. I'm hopeful that certainly North TV, Mansfield Cable Access, and Foxborough Cable Access will be there in the person of me to bring you these games somehow through the magic of electronics and television. But I don't know if too many fans are going to be allowed inside. I know I was talking to somebody today. They said that originally the EEA, the Executive Office for Energy and Environmental, what is the last? Anyway, it's an A. I never remember that. Affairs, I guess. They they recommended 50% capacity for the gyms for basketball, and I think that's going to be altered significantly. And it could all come down to just Governor Baker sitting in his office and seeing these numbers still out of control and just say, we can't do it. And that would be it. And there would be heartbroken kids all over Massachusetts if that's the case. But let's face it, this is a deadly disease, and people are not figuring it out. In fact, I just read on the internet some conservative asshole saying that it's time for Americans to rise up. No more authoritarian moves. No more lockdowns. A guy like that doesn't get COVID. Good people do. That's not right. Anyway. So, the webpage. If you want to see my thoughts on the 57th anniversary of the assassination of JFK and what it was like through the eyes of a 9-year-old child, go to my webpage, which is www.theownersbox2020.com, and you can read that, and you can get links to all of my podcasts, audio and video. You can send me an email. That's theownersbox2020@gmail.com. Always happy to hear from you folks. And, of course, snail mail is available. Got something in the mail the other day. It was very pleasant to get mail in that box. The address is the Owner's Box, Post Office Box 272, Mansfield, Massachusetts, 02048. Once again, I repeat, and I mean this, use your hand sanitizer. Use it. Wear your masks. They're not that uncomfortable. My glasses don't even fog up anymore if I wear it right. I bend the bridge in right here. I wish I was going to bring one over and I forgot to do it. I bend the bridge in, and that way I can mold it around this wonderfully Roman nose of mine. No, actually more Sicilian. And as long as the glasses are over it, I don't fog up anymore. It's great. Now, going outside, it's a mess, and I can't wait to see how that works during football season. But one season at a time, and I think it'll work. Use everything. We do not want lockdowns. If it means we can't have a dinner somewhere at a restaurant, hey, they're still making takeout. I know my friend Jen Morrell up in Boston is starting up her takeout orders at her new little site there. She has the restaurant table on Hanover Street in the North End, and now she has a little Italian market right next door to it called Table Mercato, and that's where she'll also be serving a number of her takeout specialties. So, and restaurants down here certainly are going to be doing it. So please, just do everything you have to do to get COVID-19 under control. Please. This is getting ridiculous. We are in week 39, I guess, now, or it's too much. And too many people are suffering because of this, and yet we can all do something about it, and that's to wear the masks. And if it means we skip the big Thanksgiving Day dinner this year, well, look, I've never had one. I think I used to get lucky. My friend and former colleague at the Sun Chronicle, Keith Nordstrom, and his wife Sherry used to invite me over after the Thanksgiving Day football games for many years to share their dinner with them. And believe me, that was wonderful. But after a while, it just got to be too much of an aggravation for me to leave the office. Not that I mean that anything they did was wrong, but there was so much work to do, I couldn't leave everybody else and go. But those were always pleasant memories. But I've never really done the big Thanksgiving Day thing since I was a kid. And let's just stay safe. Let's all stay safe and be healthy and try to get through this in the best way that we can. So I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Watch the football games on TV. For you folks in North Attleboro and Plainville, I think my friend Peter Gay is going to run a marathon of North Attleboro football games that you'll be able to watch on North TV. So if you want to at least remember some of the old North and Attleboro games, you're certainly welcome to them. I hope you'll throw the King Philip versus Franklin game of last year, and because Glenn and I did a good job on that one. We'll talk more about high school sports in our next podcast, but in the meantime, please stay healthy and good evening, everyone.